Welcome to Breaking the Chains, the podcast where we explore the science behind addiction and the journey to recovery. And today, we're diving into episode 6 of our Science of Addiction series. In this episode, we'll be talking about addiction and the role dopamine plays in the brain. Whether you're here to learn, heal, or support a loved one, we'll be breaking down how this powerful chemical can drive addiction and what that means for recovery. Let's get started.
All right. We're diving into something pretty amazing today.
Yeah.
It
is
something that you guys specifically requested.
a lot of requests.
A lot of requests, yeah. So it's dopamine and addiction.
Bucko up.
Yeah.
It's a wild ride.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
So we have a ton of your sources here.
Yeah, research articles, news pieces, a whole bunch of stuff.
This stuff is fascinating. We're going way beyond just the basics here.
Deeper.
Yeah.
We're getting into like the nitty-gritty.
Exactly how dopamine messes with our brains.
Yeah.
But there's a twist. We're also going to be looking at how dopamine is connected to things like Parkinson's disease.
Right, which seems completely different, but
Yeah.
stick with us.
It all comes together.
That does, yeah.
So before we get into the more addictive side of things,
Yeah.
can you give us a breakdown of what dopamine even is and why it's so important?
Yeah, so dopamine is what's called a neurotransmitter.
Okay.
And so that's like a chemical messenger
Yeah.
that basically zips between neurons in your brain, carrying these signals that can influence everything from your mood and motivation to how you move to your attention.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of a big deal.
So it's not just pleasure.
No.
Okay.
It's involved in all these different functions. Yeah.
One of the sources mentioned something about anticipation.
Oh, yeah.
And that seems like it'd be pretty important when we're talking about addiction.
Right.
What's going on there?
So dopamine isn't just about the reward itself.
Right.
It's actually also about the anticipation.
Okay.
The wanting, the drive to actually get that reward.
Mm-hmm.
So think about it.
Yeah.
When you're just about to bite into your favorite food,
Oh, yeah.
or you're almost at the finish line of a race,
Yeah.
that eagerness you feel,
Right.
that anticipation, that's all fueled by dopamine.
Wow. So it's the anticipation that kind of gets us hooked.
It's a big part of it, yeah.
Okay. So how do addictive substances fit into this?
Right.
You marked a section about cocaine.
Yeah.
What's happening in the brain with that?
So cocaine's a good example of how a drug can really mess with your dopamine system.
Okay.
So normally when dopamine is released,
Mm-hmm.
it goes into this little gap between neurons called the synapse,
Okay.
and then it's reabsorbed back up.
Right.
And this helps regulate the levels of dopamine,
Right.
keep everything balanced.
Makes sense.
Cocaine basically blocks that reuptake process.
So it's stuck.
It's basically trapped in the synapse.
Oh, wow.
And that leads to this huge surge in dopamine signaling.
Okay.
Much more intense and prolonged than what you would normally experience.
Yeah.
And that's what creates that feeling of euphoria that cocaine is known for.
So it's you're slamming the brakes on dopamine's cleanup crew.
Exactly, yeah.
No wonder it's so addictive.
Right, and it's not just drugs that can do this.
Right. Right. You also flagged some research on behavioral addictions like gambling.
Oh yeah, gambling's a great example.
What's going on there?
Things like gambling, gaming, even just excessive social media use, they can also trigger dopamine release in a similar way.
Okay.
Maybe not as intensely as some drugs, but
Right.
the principle is kind of the same.
Okay.
It's that unpredictability of rewards.
Oh, interesting.
You might win big, you might get a notification, you don't know when it's coming,
So you keep going.
and that keeps you hooked.
Makes sense.
Creates this dopamine feedback loop.
That makes me think about the studies that you shared about dopamine receptors.
Oh yeah, the receptors.
Does the type of receptor have anything to do with how susceptible we are to addiction?
That's a really good question, and that's actually an area where there's a lot of research going on right now.
Okay.
But we know there are different types of dopamine receptors in the brain
Okay.
and variations in these receptors,
Okay.
which can sometimes be due to genetics.
Right. Right.
Could explain why some people are just more prone to developing addictions than others.
So some people are just predisposed.
It's possible, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really complex.
Okay, so we've covered the highs.
The highs, yeah.
Now for a little bit of a twist.
Okay.
What about the lows?
The lows,
You had some notes about Parkinson's disease,
right,
which seems like a completely different thing.
totally different, yeah.
What's the connection to dopamine there?
Well, it might seem surprising,
Yeah.
but the connection's actually really important.
Okay.
So Parkinson's disease is characterized by a loss of dopamine-producing neurons in a specific area of the brain called the substantia nigra.
Okay.
And this area is super important for coordinating movement.
So that's why Parkinson's often involves like the tremors and difficulty moving.
Exactly.
It's like a dopamine shortage, not an excess this time.
Right. It's the opposite problem.
Wow.
And this understanding has been crucial in developing treatments for Parkinson's.
Okay.
So while there isn't a cure for Parkinson's, there are medications that can help manage the symptoms.
Okay.
And these medications often work by either mimicking dopamine or increasing the amount of dopamine that's available in the brain.
So like supplementing it.
Exactly, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so we've explored dopamine's role in driving us towards pleasure and reward.
Yeah.
And then conversely, how its depletion can lead to movement disorders.
Right, so it's not just about pleasure.
Yeah.
It's about so much more.
Dopamine is like this incredibly powerful neurotransmitter
It really is, yeah.
with a wide range of effects.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And that kind of brings us to a big question.
Okay.
If we know dopamine is this powerful,
Right.
and it can really influence our behavior,
Right.
how can we use that knowledge to make better choices?
Oh, that's a good question.
To develop healthier habits, especially in a world that's full of potential triggers for addiction.
It is like we're bombarded with things constantly.
All the time, yeah.
That is a great question to leave us with.
Yeah, something to think about.
Thanks for like guiding us through this crazy world of
Yeah.
dopamine.
Happy to do it.
And to you listening, keep digging.
Keep learning.
Who knows what other fascinating things about this feel-good molecule are waiting to be uncovered.
So much more to learn.
All right, see you next time.
See ya. Bye.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notification bell for more.